by letter. Board has been informed, has been settled, and so the application is withdrawn. The second item on the agenda is the application of Jeffrey and Morgan Moriarty at 21 Kingsland Road regarding proposed fencing and a detached storage shed on the property. And that's a continued application, and I believe the applicant is at the microphone, so happy if you can. I think between last meeting and this meeting, you submitted a short letter and revised plans on PDF and some additional photos. So if you don't mind just walking us through the additional documentation you sent us.
Sure. So hi everyone, I'm Morgan. Good to see you all again. So we're here to discuss a proposed shed and fence on our property. I'll just start with kind of a visual of the materials that we have in mind. So on the right is the shed that we have selected. The door with the transom, that's our intention that would face Kingsland Road, so that would be in front of the property, or facing the road and the property line. And then on the left-hand side is the fence. Now we're actually proposing two separate height fences. This says 48 inches, but just for kind of purposes of a visual, it is a black aluminum kind of wrought iron style fence. Important to us is that it is fairly transparent so that we have good kind of visual into the rest of the neighborhood and continue to kind of keep that open feeling from our yard. If we can start with the shed, because I think based on our discussion last time, that was perhaps the more straightforward of the two. So we'll start there and then move on to the fence. This is a kind of visual of our property, our survey, and where we propose having the shed on the property. We would like to place it on the side of our property line next to the garage, so it's easily accessible, kind of next to all of the types of things you find in the garage. That is a bit more of the narrow side of our property, and the code is to have structures 5 feet from the property line and 10 feet from the main building. We just don't have the room to do both, so we're proposing to kind of split the difference, have the shed be 5 feet from the building, 3 feet from the property line. Our neighbors, this kind of joins up to the back of their yard, and they are amenable to that location. We have talked to them about it, they're open to it. And I'll actually go to the next page. You can see, I don't think I have a pointer, but where all that kind of very tall bushes and landscaping on the right side, that's where the shed would kind of meet their property line. So hopefully that provides a visual of where we are intend to have it. It would be set back from the house, so it wouldn't be even with the garage. It's a few feet back from the house as well. Any questions on the shed maybe before we move on to the topic?
No real questions.
I will admit I added I added a slide on here, so it's not going to align perfectly.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Could you just go back to the location? Okay. The only comment I have, and I'm sure Sean will educate everybody, is when you have a structure that's 3 feet from a house, there may be additional fire safety regulations that come into play that I'm sure you'll meet, if you go ahead with this building.
That's correct. Yes.
And can you all hear me okay with the mask on? Am I should
Yes.
Okay.
Here, you probably just keep your voice up.
So this is the copy of our survey with an amended plan for the fence. The pink line, color-coded, is where we propose having a 4-foot fence. The blue line is where we're sort of coming back to you today with the agreement to do a 3-foot fence. So when we came to the board last time, there was some concern about the variance along Lakeview Avenue, which is the side of our property with a corner lot, that we were initially seeking a variance, and I will, maybe I'll actually go to the next page because it's a little bit easier to see. If you can see in the picture on the upper right-hand corner, we have a stone retaining wall that borders kind of our backyard. And the intention is to have the fence, the 3-foot portion of the fence, go up the hill, up that stone retaining wall. And then I'm actually going to go back to the survey. So this piece in pink that would be kind of perpendicular to Kingsland Road, we would request that we can get a variance. I think this is the main variance we're requesting, to be 4 feet that entire height. That is at the bottom of the hill, so that would be an area where we feel like it would be very easy for someone to, our dogs or our child, to get out of our yard with that fence. But we are amenable to going to a 3-foot fence up Lakeview because the fence sort of gets taller as you go up the hill. And I can kind of go out of presentation mode and zoom in on that if that's at all easier.
Sure. So just to make sure we're all clear about what the request is, the pink part of the fence that touches the house and then proceeds to the north-south perpendicular line is a variance needed for that section.
Can I ask I'm just trying to figure out some of the writing on here. I see that it says it's 4 feet high. Does it say 5 foot width though, or that's a gate?
It's a 5-foot width gate, yes.
Gate, okay,
Yes,
thank
yes.
you.
The only thing that is 5 feet is the width of the gate. There is no 5 feet height any longer.
So is that part of the fence immediately touching the house to that north-south line? Does that still require a variance?
Sorry.
Does that still require a variance?
I would defer to Sean, but it's my understanding that because it does come within 25 feet of the property line and in what is considered our front yard, that we'll call it 25 feet, so this area right here, maybe my visual map is a bit off, but that would require a variance.
Yeah, so the front yard, this is a corner lot, just to remind everybody.
Yeah.
So the front yard, the primary front yard is 30 feet. The secondary front yard is the one on Lakeview, which can actually be a 15-foot. It's half the distance of the primary. So anything beyond the 15-foot setback on Lakeview is permitted to be 5 feet without variance.
Okay.
Anything inside the 30 on Kingsland or inside the 15-foot setback on Lakeview has to be 3 feet.
Okay, so I guess my specific request for a variance then is the 15 feet of fencing right here.
Right, and your request is to go from 3 feet to 4 feet on that?
Well, yes, or 4 foot down to 3, I guess it depends on which direction you're going.
Okay. And then you will agree to a 3-foot fence going up Lakeview and proceeding approximately how many feet?
This is about 20 feet. There's kind of like a natural point in the property where it would be sort of, when you're standing there, it's very natural to kind of change the height of the fence, and that's about 20 feet in.
20 feet, okay. And then from that 20-foot mark,
4 foot all the way around.
well, that raises the question, there's no variance required up
No.
there, is there?
No.
There's not. It just would be the fence from the corner of the house to within 15 feet on the Lakeview side, and then the piece that goes up Lakeview and starts to curve in If you're saying that's 20 feet back, that's okay.
Okay,
You would not need it on that side. However, the section of fence that extends beyond the property into the village right-of-way, if it moves forward prior to issuance of a permit for that section, you need a licensing agreement from the board of trustees to be on the right-of-way.
yes, understood. And I think maybe just, again, to give everyone sort of the visual of what that looks like and why, you know, we would love to not need to work with the board on the village right away, but this piece of stone wall, in order to have the 3 feet in that part, because if you go up this stone wall, then there's a portion of it that's taller than 3 feet, so we've got to kind of,
Got it. So can we
balance
go
the
back to the map?
constraints.
All right, so the north section, starting with the black line and proceeding east, the pink portion, none of that requires variance.
No, none of this requires variance.
Okay, so all we're really down to is the shed location and the portion of the,
15 feet of the 3 foot, 15 feet of the 4 foot fence from Lakeview.
yeah, okay. And the fence that you propose to install is it's a metal fence and will be 4 feet in height, and it's a little unclear to me what the distance between each bar, for lack of a better word, is. Slat, thanks. But it's significant. Do you know by any chance?
I don't have the it actually says right here, about 3.5, a little over 3.
Okay. All right.
Almost 4, 3, 15, 16. Yeah.
This is 3 and 13 sixteenths, if I can squint. So about 4.
So-
We'll give you 4.
So for about 4 inches. But it's very clear that the fence that you're proposing is a fence that, you know, will not obstruct any views except for the slats. Okay. And you're willing to maintain that type of fence in that location if the variance is granted?
Absolutely.
Does the board have any questions?
I just want to understand the dimensions of the shed again, I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay.
The clearances that were being asked to approve the variance forces.
So it's an 8 by 10 shed, and we are, you know, we want to have about 3 feet between our property line and our neighbors. The landscaping there is very mature, so we want to make sure there's room to get back and kind of maintain that. And then that leaves about 5 feet between our home, which is the garage wall, and the shed.
Thank you.
And those hedges and all of that growth is going to stay on the
Yes,
property?
yes, yeah. No, we really like it. We like that landscape.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, it's a nice buffer between you and the neighbor, so, yeah. I have no other questions.
Okay, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. All in favor? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on the application? Okay, if you could just come up to a microphone and state your
Sure.
name and your address.
Which microphone?
Right here is fine.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Harry Egan's. I live at 17 Kingsland Road. So I've been in my home for 22 and a half years. And I am directly across the street from Arthur McKinley and right next to Francois Rejali. So I'm diagonally across the street from the property and the proposed fence.
I think you're talking about a different,
That's 9
this is,
Yeah,
this is
I
21
apologize.
yeah.
round property.
Let me know when we get there.
This is 21 Kingsland. You're still welcome to speak if you like.
I appreciate that, but I'm good.
All right.
Great start, though.
Anyone else from the public that would like to speak on the application?
On this application.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Hearing no one else from the public, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I know we're only four, but I think we're all prepared to vote on the application tonight. And start with the shed, and I think the location is appropriate for the property. The shed is, obviously, it's aesthetic, it's, fits in the neighborhood, won't be a detriment to the neighborhood. The adjacent landowner, homeowner supports it. Least has not objected. The applicant agrees to, and will be forced to comply with any fire regulations, considering it's going to be 3 feet from the home and also close to the neighbor's property. So while the shed may be a self-created issue, I think that's not the only factor that we consider when we're evaluating that the entire 5 prongs for an area variance. So on that issue, I think I'd make a motion to approve the shed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I just make sure we have the dimensions right? I think it was mentioned a minimum of 3 feet to the property line
3 feet to the property
and a
line.
minimum of 5 feet between the house
Yes.
and the structure.
My apologies.
No, I just want to make sure we have it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So on the fence, I think, appreciate the applicant coming back to us and sort of clarifying what the application is all about. Before the applicant was seeking a 4-foot fence along Lakeview, when only a 3-foot fence is required. I think the board has been pretty consistent in this application and in prior applications that elevated fencing along roads are disfavored. And the applicant has agreed to comply with zoning regulations for the fence along Lakeview, subject to the Board of Trustees' approval regarding the construction and the easement. Regarding the 4-foot fence for the 15 feet that extends from Lakeview towards the house, the applicant is proposing a 1-foot increase in the fence height. And the fence that the applicant is proposing is, primarily air. It's primarily going to be visible, whatever side of the fence you're going to be standing on. The 1 foot is an increase, it is a factor, but it's not the only factor we consider. It's going to be an aesthetic fence, and given the applicant's stated desire to construct a fence that's uniform from the corner of the house to Lakeview, it's probably going to be a more aesthetic fence than one that graduates. So overall, even though it's a self-created hardship, which is not the only factor we consider, I would, unless there are any comments from the board on this portion, I would make a motion to approve that part of the application as well.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So the third item on the agenda is Lighthouse Landing Communities LLC. And this is a presentation item, it's not a public hearing.
Yeah.
For that reason, I don't have a public notice. Okay, but just to summarize, this property is the Lighthouse Landing. It's the new GM development, and it concerns buildings on the east side of the west parcel, basically essentially buildings that run adjacent to or near the rail line. These aren't buildings closer to the river. And the proposal is to have building heights of 48 feet when 42 feet is the maximum.
Correct, yes.
So, thank you. Hopefully I
No,
summarized
thank
that.
you. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Annie Klein. I'm an associate at Del Bello, Donnell and Weingart and Wise and Whitaker here tonight on behalf of Lighthouse Landing. Also with me this evening is Andy Tung from DTS Providence. And we have some slides that show exactly what we're proposing, and so I'll let him walk through that. But just briefly, I know we have been here before for this very similar application, raising the height limit from 42 feet to 48 feet. But I understand that this application needs to be taken new and fresh, and so you have my statement of principal points. I can run through them if you'd like, but just briefly, as the chairman said, these buildings we're requesting the area variance for are within the 300-foot reduced height zone, which is west and parallel of the railroad. And this, due to the east parcel being deeded to the Sleepy Hollow Local Development Corporation, and that prohibiting residential use on that parcel, the planning rationale for the 42 feet no longer exists in that area. And the rest of the buildings are allowed to be built to 65 feet, and we're building all of the buildings, hopefully, to 48 feet. So with that, before I hand it over to Andy, just say that we submit that the benefits of the applicant outweighs any detriment to public health, safety, and welfare because this application is consistent with the design guidelines for the Riverside District, and also is consistent with the buildings that have been built in this area. So with that, I'll give it to Andy and show you the pretty pictures.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Andrew Tung from DTS Providence. We were last here about a little more than a year ago to seek a similar variance for the beginning of what we call Block OP, which is the northernmost townhome block within Edge on Hudson. Since that time, we went back to the planning board. Since you granted that variance, we went back to the planning board and obtained site plan approval for that first 20 units in OP. We've also been before the planning board for the site plan approval of Block A, which entails about 54,000 square foot of retail, including a DeChico's market. And then earlier this July, or this past July, Edge on Hudson applied to the planning board for the balance of the OP townhomes, what we call Townhomes 2, which is what brings us here tonight to seek another similar variance. I brought a couple of photos taken today. Thank you, Craig. To show some of the activity. Some of the activity on site. Since we were last here. There. The two photos on the left are the Heinz project. That's called Block F. It's a 5-story apartment building. Top left photo taken from the Beekman Avenue side of the site down at grade, looking towards the river. You can see the river just on the left corner, top corner of the photo. And then down the bottom left, the opposite corner where the Heinz building abuts the Tappan Zee Park, which runs through the center of the site. Top right photo, again taken from near Beekman Avenue at the ground level of the site. You see in green the construction board of the Block E buildings being constructed by Toll, and the Block I buildings on the right side clad in brick. So this is a little different than our earlier applications in that we can actually see the effect of the variances that have been granted for the construction. And then bottom right is the beginning of the waterfront open space plantings and paving that were done this summer. A little hard to pick out against the river, but you can see the tree frameworks, the tree profiles against the river. As Annie mentioned, we're here because of the RF district zone height requirements, which in purple designated previously a 42-foot height limitation within 300 feet west of the Metro-North Railroad. Either side in the medium blue is a 65-foot zone. And on the right side of the railroad is what's called the east part, what we call the east parcel, and that's going to be village uses, including a DPW yard and recreational fields. So there will no longer be residential proposed on the east parcel. And so, as Annie mentioned, the planning rationale for the lower 42-foot height, we believe, is no longer present. And we have been before your board previously for 3 sets of variances for the I, E, and J blocks, and also the OP first set of townhomes. And we're now here for the second set, which are up at the top. Up here, this is block OP, and the second set, the northernmost set of townhomes that front on Legend Drive. There's a cross-section through that section of the site. It also shows the similar height zones, taller, medium blue, 65-foot height on the east side of the tracks, and in the center of the site, and the 42 feet, 300 feet west of the tracks. It's within that 42-foot zone that we're seeking an additional 6 feet in order to build a full 4-story building for residential use. We're also here before you now because Edge on Hudson has designated the builder for these buildings, these townhomes, Sun Homes. And they've prepared their architectural renderings that show, in a similar way to Block J and the toll projects, that they will seek to utilize the 48 feet, but the 4th story will be set back along Legend Drive so that it will only be perceived as you walk along or drive along the street as 3 stories on that side, as opposed to the 4 stories on the east side in the toll buildings.
So just, if you don't mind staying on that slide, just so I'm clear. On the right side of that slide are the 48-foot homes constructed by Toll Brothers for which the board previously granted a variance up to 48 feet.
That's correct.
And then on the left side of the slide is the proposal before us.
That's correct. And as I mentioned, we actually now have visuals of what this looks like in the field. And I have 3 sets of photos, or 3 photos. Which start at the south end and move northward along Legend Drive. Legend Drive is a street that parallels the railroad tracks. And so you see the toll, what we call I buildings on the right side. Those are the full 4 stories. And then this is the E block being built by Toll. That's a condo building, which, similar to the townhomes, you can see 3 stories and then the 4th story sets back. So we do utilize, and your board did grant a variance for that 4th story, but architecturally it seemed to make sense to Toll's architect and also to the OP architect, Sun Homes, that 4th story be set back.
But
So
thanks. This is very helpful. This slide, the buildings on the right side, just walk me through that building there. Please.
Yes, so this is the Toll. There are 3 parallel buildings on the east side of the Legend Drive, and the tracks are just behind them. So those are in the section that I showed previously, those are the 4-story buildings. 4-story buildings here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they show right up to the street because they were proposed as loft-type buildings. So that's a loft-inspired brick building. The townhomes are slightly smaller scale. The condos and the townhomes being built by Toll, slightly smaller scale, different architecture, not as industrial looking, if you will. So that 4-story sets back, and the area at the street is actually used as a patio area, an outdoor area, by most residents. Residents have some, not in this building, but in the next set of townhome buildings, have some latitude as to how they fit out the 4th floor. So this gives them the opportunity to do that.
And we granted a variance up to 48 feet for the building on the right.
And the building on the left.
And the building on the left,
It's within that purple zone.
in that purple zone.
Right.
And the buildings that you're proposing a variance for in this application, are they on both sides of the street?
They're just on the left side, further down the street.
Just on the left side, and they're all going to conform to the setback fourth floor.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So moving down the street a little further, these are the townhomes, the tall townhomes in Block J. And these are similar in that you see 3 stories at the street, and you can see a structure on the 4th floor that's set back from the street. That's that setback to the 4th floor that gives living space outside of the top floor. And again, this is the I-2 building. Hopefully they'll come up with better names eventually, but the second I building on the right. Again, the 4th floor is visible. And then further north, this is I-1, again with the 4th floor. And then on the left side is where these buildings would go. 4 stories high, but the 4th story set back from the fence. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
On the map, is it possible for you to just bring up the map and sort of outline the specific area where you're requesting the variance?
This is block OP at the north end of the site.
Yeah.
And it's the buildings that front on Legend Drive, at North-South Street that we were looking at the photos down. And it's basically the townhomes that face onto Legend Drive. West of that, we're permitted 65 feet. Within, oops.
Trying to zoom in.
How'd you do that? Magic.
It's the buildings that are surrounded by the dashed line, right?
That's correct, right here. Just these,
There's
18,
18.
perhaps 19 as we look at the design. But all the buildings that are facing onto Legend Drive.
So what happens when you cross the line into the 65-foot zone? What are the buildings going, what height are those buildings?
Well, these townhomes are still going to be in the 48-foot neighborhood. They might go a little bit taller as they move into the 65-foot zone, but basically they're 4 stories. 4 stories, and some of them are 3 stories, in fact.
So,
Thank you, Peter.
thank you. So
So it's these buildings that front on Legend Drive, opposite the last I building.
if the board enforced the 42-foot requirement, what you would have are about 19 homes that would be at 42 feet, and then immediately adjacent to them would be homes around 48 feet.
That's correct.
And these are all the homes in between Palisades Boulevard and Hollows Pass?
That's correct. The ones facing on Legend Drive. The balance are west of that, also between Hollows and Palisades, and the Tappan Zee Park, the third section of Tappan Zee Park.
Any questions from the board?
I don't know if it's within our purview, so apologies, but what is intended for area N, which does not appear to be populated on the master plan?
And we're in the process of combining in the site plan application for O&P. It will contain, or is proposed to contain, a clubhouse and amenity building for the OP residents, as well as some on-grade parking.
So it's intended to be built out?
It will be, yes,
Okay. Okay,
but not to require a variance.
thank you. Well, I'm just curious if it was intended to remain as open space or not.
It will be partly open space, there'll be some exterior amenities space adjacent to the clubhouse.
Well, what is the next step in your application? Are you going before the planning board?
Well, we have been before the planning board, as I mentioned, since July. We're going back there tomorrow night. We were advised that we needed to, or the zoning board needed to refer this matter to the planning board for its comment. So we will be briefing the planning board on what we've talked about tonight. We would hope that you'd be able to, in anticipation of receiving a memo from the planning board, you'd be able to schedule a hearing at the appropriate time for the variance.
Okay. So, Sean, what's the best way to proceed?
I'm confident that the board will move tomorrow night to send this to a public hearing on the planning board's end, as well as, if you are obviously ready, we can schedule that tonight for next month's meeting for public hearing.
Yeah, that makes sense. The next month's, what day is
I
it?
believe it's the 16th, February 16th. Yes.
Okay. I have to travel that week, so you can still go forward. We'll have a
Pending a quorum.
pending quorum, we'll have an interim chair, but,
It's the week before school break.
yeah, it's a week before school break, but I slept, yeah. But if that's okay with you, I would just suggest putting it on, obviously with the planning board's recommendation, I would suggest putting it on for the 16th and pending quorum. Just go ahead on that date, and you always have the option to ask the board to postpone it till March.
Great, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the application of John and Christine Mancuso for 145 Hunter Avenue. And I'll read the public notice. Please take notice that the Zoning Board of Appeals
Yes.
of the Village of Sleepy Hollow will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, January 19th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Municipal Building, 28 Beekman Avenue, Sleepy Hollow, New York, to receive comments from the public on the application submitted by John and Christine Mancuso to construct a one-story addition where the following variances from Chapter 450 of the Code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow are required. Article 6, 450-34B, applicability of regulations, adding to and altering an existing non-conforming building. Maximum required lot width 75 feet, existing lot width 70 feet. Article 450-35, schedule of regulations. Minimum front yard setback 30 feet, existing front yard setback 31.1 feet, proposed front yard setback 25.1 feet. The property involved in the application is located at 145 Hunter Avenue, is situated in the R2 zoning district, and is shown on town tax assessment maps as Section 11019, Block 1, Lot 18. A copy of the application and accompanying documents are available for review at the Department of Architecture, Land Use Development, Buildings and Building Compliance during normal business hours, or may be reviewed and downloaded from the village's website. Written comments may also be sent in a manner ensuring receipt by 4 p.m. on the day of the public hearing by mail to Chairman Timothy Church, care of the Village of Sleepy Hollow, Department of Architecture, Land Use Development, Buildings and Building Compliance, 28 Beekman Avenue, Sleepy Hollow, New York, 10591, or by email to smccarthy@villageofsleepyhollow.org by order of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Village of Sleepy Hollow. And in support of the application, we received 8 documents: the ZBA determination letter, the Zoning Board of Appeals application parts 1 to 4 signed by the owner, the zoning compliance form prepared by the architect, the short environmental assessment form, the property deed, photographs of existing conditions, a topographical map, and also drawings prepared by the architect. Sean, have all the notices been sent out?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you for coming, and if you could please state your name and
Yeah,
tell us.
well, good evening, everyone, Chairman and board members. Thank you for having us today. My name's Christine Mancuso. It's my husband, John Mancuso, and unfortunately, our architect could not be here today, so grant us a little grace when going over some of the plans. We'll do our best in our simple terms. But we wanted to start here just to show just an existing photo of the front of our house currently. And of course, we'll take it where you'd like us to go, but we were thinking of, going over the scope of our project today.
Sure. So we're, seeking a 5-foot variance into the front yard setback, as Christine mentioned. This is currently what the front of the house looks like. We're looking to allow for just a minimal, just a small one-story addition to create a 3/4 usable bathroom, a covered entrance. As you can see, it's currently exposed to some elements, as indicated by the steps and everything else. That goes into a small foyer, and then renovate the existing unfinished garage to kind of turn that into a small family room that will have a washer dryer in there as well.
So, just to add on to what John just mentioned, you can't see this from the door here, but as you walk in, you're at the bottom of our stairs. So with a family of 4, so John, myself, our 1-year-old and 3-year-old, it's hard to get everyone in and out of the house currently.
So this picture is what the current setup is, right? The door kind of opens right into the bottom of the steps, which also kind of opens into a closet and into a small powder room. What we're looking for will be something more like this, give us a little more room when we walk in, turn that powder room into a full bathroom. Currently, there's only one full bathroom in the house. And then what was an existing garage, which was up here, and that top right-hand corner, would be to turn that into a family room.
Any questions so far on what we went over? We also have the survey we can pull up too, if that's helpful.
Before you move on from this, I just
Yes.
want to make sure we summarize the application properly. Is you're looking really for a 5-foot incursion into the front yard setback.
Correct.
It's going to be 2 stories or 1
One.
story?
1 story.
That's right.
1 story, and the 1-story incursion is to expand the entrance and add a bathroom. Or expand the bathroom.
To expand the bathroom.
Expand the
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is, what the existing setup looks like. This would be what the proposed plan looks like, keeping with the aesthetic of the house.
Can you just take the mouse and just circle the new part?
Yeah, right here is the new,
Just there.
Yeah, right there.
right there.
Okay. Thank you.
So just out. It's not extending to the side, just out.
Got it. It's aesthetically, it's barely perceptible difference.
Right.
It's a bit more
Yeah.
aesthetic, but
That's tough to.
Yeah.
And this front entrance faces the road or faces the side yard?
Faces the road. Yeah.
And how does this compare to the other homes on your block in terms of going into the setback?
So everything, see if we have any other plans or anything else on the survey. Let's see, this is the plan proposal.
I'm not sure if I could speak to the other homes, but I think they're probably within the range of I think it was 30 foot, is that what was the setback?
Yeah,
30 to 32 or something.
Yeah, they're within the range. I think, when Sean and I spoke about it, Hunter's kind of, pretty much all the homes are right at that 30-foot setback, some are 31,
Yeah,
32.
Hunter Avenue was the last street in the manner to be developed. And as a result, a lot of the properties on that street are actually existing non-conforming. And several of them have been before the zoning board for different setbacks for expanded construction over the years.
Okay. And those generally been granted?
Yes. On both sides of the street.
Okay.
And we've spoken with many of our neighbors who we did send the mailings to, and they're in support. We have a letter of support too. If need be, we can share that with the board as well.
You might as well, yeah.
Yeah, we have, okay.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Okay.
Very straightforward.
Okay, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
So,
All in favor?
all right.
Anyone from the public that wants to speak on the application? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? So I'll make a motion to approve the application. Clearly, there won't be an undesirable change produced in the character of the neighborhood by a relatively minor 5-foot incursion into the setback. It's, like we just discussed, in keeping with the other homes on Hunter Avenue. The aesthetic is the same as the house, so it's not going to be unaesthetic or not aesthetically pleasing. The benefits sought by the applicant, the applicant could ask for an even further incursion, but the applicant's chosen a relatively minor 5-foot request. So I don't think the benefit that the applicant is seeking can be achieved by some other feasible method. And I also don't think that the requested variance is substantial. Again, the variance won't have any type of impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. And while the request is self-created, that's not the only factor that the board considers when we consider area variances. And then regarding the pre-existing non-conforming condition of the lot width, that's just something that the applicant has to deal with every time. So I'll make a motion to approve the application. All in favor? Aye. Well, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you want me to?
No, you can leave it.
So the last item on the agenda, second and last, aside from the minutes, is the application of Richard and Elizabeth Pacheco at 9 Hemlock Drive. And I'll read the notice. Please take notice that the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Sleepy Hollow will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, January 19, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Municipal Building, 28 Beekman Avenue, Sleepy Hollow, New York, to receive comments from the public on the application submitted by Richard and Elizabeth Pacheco to install fencing where the following variances from Chapter 450 of the Code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow are required. Article 7, 450-40F, supplementary regulations, coverage and open spaces and walls, maximum permitted fence height 3 feet, proposed fence height 4 feet. The property involved in the application is located at 9 Hemlock Drive, is situated in the R2A zoning district, and is shown on town tax assessment maps as section 11015, block 2, lot 16. A copy of the application and accompanying documents are available for review at the Department of Architecture, Land Use Development, Buildings and Building Compliance during normal business hours, or may be reviewed and downloaded from the village's website. Written comments may also be sent in a manner ensuring receipt by 4 p.m. on the day of the public hearing by mail to Chairman Timothy Church, care of the Village of Sleepy Hollow, Department of Architecture, Land Use Development, Buildings and Building Compliance, 28 Beekman Avenue, Sleepy Hollow, New York, 10591, or by email to smccarthy@villageofsleepyhollow.org by order of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Sleepy Hollow. In support of the application, we received 10 items. The Zoning Board of Appeals determination letter, the ZBA application parts 1 through 4, the zoning compliance form, the short environmental assessment form, the Westchester County recording page and property deed, the survey dated March 11, 2010 with proposed fencing locations, the fence specification sheet, the overhead aerial view of the property, the overhead view from the west, and the Kingsland Road view. These are all images of photographs. So Sean, have all the notices been sent out?
Yes, they have.
Well, thank you. If you could just state your name and go ahead with the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. Thank you for having me and considering this proposal. We're looking to put a 4-foot fence on what I would consider the back half of my property. Although we sit on a corner lot, and therefore I have 2 front yards. And this application, I guess, is very similar to what you heard earlier on 21 Kingsland. And Sean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that what I'm requesting is a variance for a 15-foot set, on the 15-foot setback from Kingsland Road. I can put a fence, but it has to be 3 feet. I'm requesting to put a 4-foot fence to be consistent with the rest of the fencing location around on the perimeter of the back half of the property.
So,
That's correct. The side that's, the variance is needed is on the Kingsland Road side. Again, similar to the other application, the 15-foot setback off there, it's a secondary front yard, and therefore nothing higher than 20 feet is permitted in that area.
So 15 feet from Kingsland Road in.
That's correct.
So the entire C. So the piece that is on Kingsland Road and then 15 feet in the 14.6.
Yes.
Being the side of the house and what looks like maybe on the back property line is the variance request.
That's correct. So on this image, the front of the house is along Hemlock Drive on the left side of this image. The side of the house is on Kingsland Road, which is at the top. And so the stretch along Kingsland Road, and then 15 feet going down on the image is what requires the variance. So what we're proposing in terms of the actual, any questions on the location of the fence before I continue?
No.
What I'm proposing is actually the same exact fence as 21 Kingsland. It's a black aluminum fence, standard 48 inches. I believe also 17 Hemlock has this same exact fence. And then just, this is sort of an aerial view of the same thing. I think one of the concerns was on Kingsland. Apologies, I don't know how to rotate this. So on Kingsland Road, this is me standing on Kingsland looking at my property. We already have like 12 feet or higher shrubbery that really the fence is going to go on the outside of. So it's not going to, the fence won't block any views. I mean, the fence, you can see through the fence anyways, but I just wanted to point out that it won't obstruct any views at the corner for cars or anything like that. Also, it doesn't go all the way to the corner, so I just wanted to point that out.
How far from the road will the fence be placed?
Oh, in terms of from the curb?
Correct.
I believe it's marked as very small, but it says 24 inches. There are several other corner lots that have 12 inches or less, fencing that are 12 inches or less within the neighborhood. So, but the fencing contractors that I spoke to all thought that that was the appropriate distance.
So the fence is going to have to be located on your property, so you can't judge it based upon where the pavement is. You actually have to use the dimensions that are on the survey and use those as the offsets to determine where the property is.
Right. So to that point, my intention is because I don't know exactly where, there's no visual marker of where the property line is. My intention is to have the property staked and use that as a guide to install the fence. And my understanding is that we can go up to, but not on the property line.
But who will stake the property? Who does that?
A surveyor.
So why do you want a 4-foot fence?
Several reasons. Well, one is, I just think a 3-foot fence, while it does serve the purpose of containing dog, children, keeping predators or anybody else out, that extra foot makes a huge difference in terms of a dog being able to jump over. I just think it gives us an extra layer of utility that a 3-foot fence doesn't. Additionally, the fence that I shared with you, that's the standard size they come in. If I needed to go to a 3-foot fence, it would need to be custom and cost prohibitive and probably would end up in a less attractive fence.
Regarding the dog issue, have you thought about a 3-foot fence and higher shrubs up against the fence, to protect kids jumping or dogs jumping over the fence?
Yeah, I mean, we've considered that as well as invisible fence. So in terms of the shrubbery, I mean, I think it's an option, but there is still the potential risk that a dog can get through the shrubbery or that snowfall can damage the shrubbery. So I don't think it's a fool's proof. We've also considered an invisible fence. However, I think the main objection to that has been it doesn't stop anything from coming in.
No, I understood about the invisible fence, and those aren't appropriate for all dogs anyway. I think the more, the larger question is whether you can accomplish the goal of containing the yard with a 3-foot fence and, let's say, 2 or 3 foot wide shrubs that go 6 feet in height. That's just one option that's available to homeowners.
Well, we have, as you saw on the Kingsland side picture, we have shrubs there that are 12 feet, but they're not, I mean, I can sort of squeeze through them if I needed to, and a dog with a lower center of gravity could probably do that much easier than I can and probably jump over a 3-foot fence.
Well, yeah, and the idea is not to use the shrubs as to block ingress and egress by dogs or kids. The idea is to use it in combination with the fence.
Right.
So, what do you say to the idea that, look, the Sleepy Hollow Manor, Phillips Manor, in fact, even Beekman and Weber Park, there's a 3-foot fence requirement for fences that border roads, essentially. Okay, and it has added to the aesthetic of the village of Sleepy Hollow. It also is a safety issue, generally speaking. So, what is the compelling reason why we should grant a variance along Kingsland for an increase in height, given the way the village is set up?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, I guess I never really paid attention until I decided to put up a fence, and I sort of, I had to do a mailing to the 22 properties within a 200-foot radius, and I realized that over half of them actually have fences, and all but one of them was over 4 feet. And as I mentioned before, there are 4 corner lots that have fences that have 4 feet or higher fences. So I don't think that I'm an outlier in terms of messing with the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I do respect that, and I love the fact that the manor is open and that it has that natural feel, and sort of that's why we chose the fence we did, because we felt like it blended in with the surroundings. It didn't feel intrusive. The other thing is, as I mentioned, if you don't grant the variance, I mean, I plan to put a fence there anyways. So I just personally believe that we would end up putting something that's less attractive and would be, just wouldn't represent the aesthetic of the neighborhood and or the property.
Can you go to the overview shot, the overhead shot? If you cut it here, this is already 23 feet, it's 15 from Kingsland, you wouldn't even need a variance if you brought the fence in from here to the corner of the house. So you're asking, and you could make it any size you want.
You're asking me to cut,
You bring it in from the back to the corner of the, I don't know whether that's an aerial patio or a deck.
yeah, but I mean, I end up cutting my backyard in half or a quarter, which I don't think is very super functional. Is your concern that you just don't want a fence along Kingsland?
Right. We don't have a concern. Our job is to uphold the rules that were given. And we need to really have a compelling reason to make an exception to those rules. So I'm just giving you options of what you would not have to come before us for.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to maximize the space with that's actually contained. And I also think that having, from the front of the house, having a fence on this side in the front and this side in the front makes it look like an attractive and aesthetically pleasing home. So you're right, I could potentially do that. But again, I am allowed to do a 3-foot fence, and I probably would do that option if denied.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is there any portion of the area that you're requesting a variance that you'd agree to go to a 3-foot fence to minimize the impact on the neighborhood?
I mean, I guess the main part where I would consider it is the corner of Kingsland and McKinley's property. So on the north side, as you probably received, they sent in some comments. It seems like their comments are more in protest of the fence in general versus the variance that I'm requesting. I did speak with Mr. McKinley, and he did raise a concern that at least along the back, most of this property, there are shrubs, so I think the impact to him would be minimal. However, as we get to closer to Kingsland, all of a sudden you're going to see this fence running along there because the shrubbery sort of ends a few feet before the actual road. And so I would consider sort of cutting it diagonally across to minimize the physical or the aesthetic, or having the fence be sort of not surrounded by shrubs to minimize the visual impact to McKinley's, and perhaps even consider a 3-foot fence there with shrubbery as you suggested, Mr. Chairman.
So you would maintain the 4-foot height fence, but cut the corner and then bring it in, or you would bring the fence down to 3 feet and have it 3 feet along Kingsland?
I mean, I guess I could put a 3-foot fence along there, but again, My concern is keeping the consistency, and I talked to 3 fence contractors, and they basically said that they don't make these types of fences in 3 feet. So I would have to find an alternative, and I would need to, so it would look inconsistent, and I would need to your point, I'd probably need to figure out a way to put shrubs with the fence to make sure that a dog couldn't jump over the 3-foot section of the fence.
Okay.
So it is certainly an option. I would,
We don't have to decide tonight, it's just something to consider. One thing to point out is that you have 4 members of the board here. Normally, the board will have 7, okay? And you need 4 votes to obtain a variance. And if one member of the board doesn't agree with the application, you can't come before the board for another 6 months with the same application. You can come back to the board with a materially different application quicker than 6 months. But the point I'm making is that, perhaps the best thing to do is to, consider different options between now and the next meeting. Postpone a vote on the application to the next meeting, and then you can think about the questions the board asked and see if you're, agreeable to make any amendments to the application, rather than having to decide on the spot. We'll open up the public hearing tonight, but I just thought, I raised that
that's fine.
for your consideration.
Sure.
Any questions from the board? No?
No, just to clarify, so it would need to be unanimous if we took a vote tonight. If it's tabled till we have more members, you just need the majority. So,
Right. Well, you need 4.
Yeah. And if you took the vote, I'd have to wait 6 months before.
if we deny it, then you'd have to wait, 6 months before you can come back.
Understood. All right, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second?
All in favor? Is there anyone from the public who wants to speak on the application?
Yes, thank you. Hi, again, my name is Harry Higgins. I live at 17 Kingsland Road. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board, for allowing me to speak this evening. First thing I want to do is commend Richard and his wife for the enhancements and the improvements they made to their home. It's beautiful. And they've done a fantastic job. I haven't seen the inside, the outside looks great. So obviously that's very positive. In terms of the fence, I do have one question. So I'm looking at the diagram, and maybe you can go back to the actual picture, but have you considered moving the fence? And I'm pointing at Kingsland Road, and it looks in the diagram here that it's very close to the road. And there are no fences on Kingsland Road to date. So I'm wondering, would you consider moving the fence about 8 feet away from the river, which would be east, to be inside the shrubbery? Because the shrubbery, as Richard said, is very tall, and it's beautiful, and it's well maintained. And therefore, it would almost be hidden along Kingsland Road. And it would be a huge sigh of relief to everybody that lives on Kingsland and Hemlock, I believe.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that question. Thank you. Because that's something from living in the neighborhood that, is a bit more obvious to you than us. I appreciate that.
Very good.
And that's something that Richard can consider between now and the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Can I speak as well?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Delphine McKinley. My father, Mark McKinley, owns the house just adjacent to Mr. Pacheco at 18 Kingsland. And he submitted a letter, so I wanted to make sure that everyone could review the letter before the next hearing as well, with multiple points discussing the 5 reasons why we don't feel that it's up to the City Hall Code, section 45080. And generally, I think while we don't like the idea of a fence because we like the open concept of City Hall Manor, I think we would like to work with Mr. Pacheco if he is keen on having a fence on what that could look like. My family does not like the look of the black iron fence that would be right on the road and visible, from our property line. The way that it's shown right now, it's directly on the property line. It would be cutting a lot of greenery, potentially trees, to put it there. So I think that's something that we would like to understand a little bit more about and converse about. But I encourage you all to just read the points in the letter because it covers the 5 key code rules. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
and
you.
yes, we received the letter.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public that would like to speak on the application? Okay, I'll make the motion to close the public hearing. For the reasons I suggested, perhaps the best thing to do is to make a motion to postpone the hearing until the next date and come back and discuss it again.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. The last item on the agenda is approval of the December minutes, but I believe we're going to defer that to the next meeting. All right, so I'll make a motion to close the hearing. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.